is signs of imminent labor. Like, and I hear this all the time, and I'm in lots of birth groups on Facebook. Of course, this one's my favorite, but I'm in lots, and I can't tell you how often. You've probably seen them too. There's all these posts that start with this, and this happened in my body, or I felt this. I wonder if anyone else has had this experience, and how long after you had this experience did labor start? Like, the question basically boils down to how many days after X did you go into labor? And like, it's like so seriously common question. And I've asked it myself. Trust me. Like, it's funny how even though I've been pregnant 5 times, well, actually 7, but 5 to term, I still ask these questions and Google them at the end of my pregnancies. So I'm not, I'm right there with you. If you've asked this question, I'm not judging that. The truth is that at the end of our pregnancy, we are biologically hardwired to be hyper-focused, like very narrow focus on our upcoming birth and our babies. Like, it's like tunnel vision, and it's okay. Like, it's appropriate and it's biologically wired that way. But we can get like kind of obsessive about these questions, like trying to figure out, when is this thing going to start? Because really, as I've said to my husband so many times, and I don't think he can fully relate to this, being pregnant and towards the end of your pregnancy is the strangest thing in terms of you're sitting there and you know that at any moment, this intense biological process over which you have no control could start up, and that when it does, it's going to change your life forever. Like, holy smokes, right? Like, that's weighty. That's big. You're like sitting in the presence of this looming, unpredictable, completely life-altering event that you can't control and you can't choose. And that's hard to sit with that, guys. It is. It just is hard to sit with that. So it makes sense why in that space we're looking for ways to pinpoint, to predict, to measure, to anticipate, to somehow get our head around what's about to go down and how it's going to go down. Okay, so let me run through this in a really practical level. I've made a list of signs and symptoms that indicate labor is approaching. Now as I go through this list, I'm going to classify each thing on the list as either a sign that labor is approaching or imminent. And let me define those terms. Approaching meaning you are nearing the end. You might be a week to 2, maybe even 3 or 4 days out from labor. Like, things are shifting. Your time is coming, but it's not like 24 or 48 hours away. Whereas imminent, I'm going to define as, well, like the dictionary defines it as ready to happen or about to happen. Like, you are on the precipice at any second. Like, this is going to happen probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. Okay. Spoiler alert, most of the things on this list are signs of approaching labor, not imminent labor. There are very few that, like, if you're a midwife, you get excited about because you know it means it's actually imminent. Okay. The rest of them are just signs that things are approaching. Okay. Cervical dilation. As home birthers, we might not even be having this checked, or maybe you're checking yourself, which is amazing, wonderful, if you feel like you can do that and want to do that. But of course, our cervixes dilate often before we're even in labor. They can get to 1, 2, 3, even 4 or 5 centimeters, especially if you've had multiple babies before. You can do a lot of dilating before you're actually in labor. So it can feel really exciting to be told by somebody, oh, you're 2 centimeters or 3 centimeters already. But actually, it's a pretty poor determiner of how soon labor will happen, because you can walk around for weeks partially dilated, and it's not a problem. It just is kind of a thing. So that is definitely an approach that, a sign that labor is approaching. Another one would be baby dropping down and engaging in your pelvis. By engage, we mean the head drops down below the pubic bone. So if you were to palpate your baby's body through your muscles and skin, you would be able to, like, when you feel the head, it's going to be partially covered by the pubic bone and therefore not able to be like moved back and forth by your hand as much, because the baby's locked in and engaged. Now, this again can be a sign that labor is approaching, but it can be deceptive and misleading, because sometimes a baby will pop in and out of that engaged position several times before you actually go into labor. And you can go into labor without the baby being engaged. For many moms, especially moms who've had many babies, the baby may not engage until partway through labor. So this is not really a great indicator. It does mean your baby is practicing, right? Like experimenting with positions that he or she can get into to be born. And that's encouraging. That's a good sign, but it doesn't mean like you're going to go into labor tomorrow. Emotional shifts. This is one that I personally experience a lot of, is either like a sudden burst of just intense like despair and weepiness, and everything makes me cry. I just feel like so fragile emotionally. Like, you know, like the hormonal PMS cry, where it's like, these are real emotions, but they're definitely like being amplified by hormones. It's kind of like that kind of like just weepy hormonal emotional state. This is definitely a thing. As the hormones shift towards the end of your pregnancy, our emotions shift with them. It's inevitable. Again, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go into labor tomorrow, but it means things are approaching. It means hormonal shifts are happening that are preparing your body for the labor process. And so again, it's encouraging. You're getting close, but don't count on waking up in labor. Bursts of nesting energy, like cleaning obsessively or suddenly feeling like you have this huge bee in your bonnet to get all the things on your to-do list done, and you have this like energy to do it suddenly, is another thing that some women experience towards the very ends of their pregnancy, but it's definitely more of a sign of labor approaching, not a sign of labor being imminent. Conversely, there's also sometimes fatigue, where you'll get very, very tired towards the end and find that you need more sleep, and you have like a need to nap again as if it was first trimester. You know, first trimester, you're like so tired you could sleep almost any time. You kind of like might experience another wave of that towards the end of your third trimester. It's a sign of pregnancy, of labor approaching, and your body storing up energy for labor, but not necessarily a sign that labor is imminent. Your baby might get quieter. That's another one that sometimes women will experience late in third trimester, is that their baby, who had previously been really active and kicking and punching and rolling and moving, may seem to get kind of just quiet. Like the movements become less big and less frequent. And it can be worrisome. It can make us think, oh, maybe something's wrong. And sometimes that is a reason to be worried. So it is good to pay attention. And if your baby has been quiet for a long time, you might want to like drink some orange juice or some ice water or something to kind of startle them into action and make sure they're still good in there. But sometimes babies really do seem to want to rest up before labor. It's like they, like you, on some level might know that something really big is about to happen that they're going to go through. And so they're going to rest up for it. They get a little quieter, or they've gotten into a position that just is good. And so they're not really moving from it, or they're running out of room to move, which can be another reason they get a little bit quieter. Again, that means it's coming, but probably not tomorrow. So approaching. Prodromal labor. Prodromal labor is when we have contractions that are real. They're not Braxton Hicks. Like it's not just the overall tummy tightening of characteristic of Braxton Hicks, but it's like actual crampy spread from your pelvic bone down to your lower back kind of contractions. And they might even get a pattern, a little bit of a pattern. This is more likely to happen if you've had 3 or more babies, by the way. Less likely to happen if you're a first-time mom. But they are real. But the problem is they never settle into a pattern that lasts. And the only real difference is they don't end in birth. They would just fizzle out. So you may end up having these prodromal labor contractions for hours a day, for days on end, weeks on end for some mamas, and still not actually end up giving birth. So again, it is definitely a sign that labor is approaching, but not a sign that labor is imminent, because you don't know how many days that's going to go on. It can make it really confusing though, because, and this has happened to me a couple of times, after having prodromal labor for so long, by the time it really was labor, I didn't really trust it. I just kind of assumed that it was another round of the fake stuff, you know? So that can be kind of a like, it's like a mind game. It just completely messes with your mind. I find it best in that case to just kind of assume that it's false every time and try not to get your hopes up too much. Okay, your mucus plug. So, you know, when you're pregnant, your body creates a plug of mucus to like line your cervix and kind of seal off the uterus from infection. It's brilliant design, really. It's kind of like corking a wine bottle. Like, just like, we're going to seal this off, make sure that everything inside is like free from the or safe from the outside world and any infection that could bring in. So towards the end of your pregnancy in third trimester, you might start to lose it, and you might lose it in chunks and globs that are really obvious on the toilet paper or in the toilet, or it may kind of like melt out in the form of like just feeling really wet and like you're just kind of like having like watery mucus. Can go either way. Again, but here's the thing, it can replenish itself. So you can start shedding your mucus plug in third trimester, especially the latter part of it. And then your body might make more to replace it. So again, it means labor is approaching, but it's certainly not necessarily imminent. Unless it's what we call bloody show. Bloody show is kind of like all the mucus, the globby mucus, plus blood. Like it will be tinged pink or have red streaks in it. And that we call bloody show. And this is one of the ones that the midwives get excited about. Bloody show is usually one of the few signs that labor actually is imminent. You probably will have your baby 24 to 48 hours after having your bloody show. Like, and one of the reasons it's so promising is because the blood in that mucus is an indicator of cervical change, meaning the cervix is thinning and dilating. And in the process of that, because those tissues are what we call friable, meaning more easily bleeding, they will leave those bloody streaks in your mucus. It means that things are moving along, like for real. What about cramping? Cramping, again, is different than Braxton Hicks. We're talking more like it feels like menstrual cramps in your like lower pubic area and possibly your lower back. It really can feel a lot like menstruation. That is another one that's kind of on the edge for me between meaning you're approaching labor and meaning labor is imminent. But I tend to put it a little bit more in the imminent camp, especially if it just persists and like doesn't go away when you change positions or if you hydrate, you know, like it just keeps being there. Your diarrhea or emptying your bowels where you suddenly just like have to poop a ton or possibly have a lot of diarrhea. That one is usually, again, a sign of hormonal shifts happening and or your baby changing positions in ways that are putting pressure in your digestive tract that are like forcing some things to clear out. Usually, though, how it means like labor is approaching, but not necessarily imminent. You could do that several days before you go into labor. It's not necessarily like a day before thing. But some women will clear their bowels in early labor or the day before, but it's just not like a reliable sign that labor is imminent. It can be, but it's not consistently enough a sign of that I would be like excited, like, oh, I'm having diarrhea, that means I'm gonna have a baby tomorrow. Like, no, it's not quite that reliable. Feeling sick, run down, like almost like you have the flu. This one's kind of weird, but some women do report that happening very late in pregnancy, and I don't actually know what that's about, but more a sign that labor is approaching, not necessarily imminent. Water breaking, like your water's breaking spontaneously, even before contractions. If it's a real gush of a leak, like it really breaks, usually that means it's an imminent labor. Like you can go, and I have gone 24 hours or more after your water breaks before you have a single contraction. If you're having a home birth, if you're in the hospital, that's usually not allowed. Like they will try to force contractions to begin so that you can have your baby before the 24-hour mark. That's kind of like the hospital standard and goal. But when you're having a home birth, if you're working with an understanding midwife, she will let your waters remain broken for a while and just caution you not to do certain things like, well, anything that's penetrative basically. So no cervical checks, no penetrative sex, things like that you want to kind of avoid, or maybe even staying out of baths just to avoid introducing potential infection into that area once the water bag has broken. But I think most women, once their water has truly broken, will begin contractions within a few days, a couple of days, 3 days. And if it goes longer than that, then, you know, you have to be wary, or you just have to be alert and watching yourself for signs of infection or like low amniotic fluid or baby not doing well with that situation. But your body also replenishes amniotic fluid after your water has broken. So you need to stay very well hydrated, but your body will make more amniotic fluid and will keep doing that until you've given birth. So you don't need to be necessarily concerned about that one. Okay, and then contractions. Contractions that develop a pattern and a rhythm and get stronger and closer together. That's labor. That's definitely labor's imminent. Very few. So we don't like that. I don't like it. And, oh shoot, I'm getting a message that we're having trouble streaming. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep trying anyway. We don't like it because we like to be able to predict. But here's what I want to encourage you with. All those other signs that are signs that labor is approaching, but not necessarily imminent, they're still good. Nothing's wasted. Your body is incredibly intelligent and your baby's incredibly intelligent. And all of those other things that are happening are all preparing the way. They're ripening you, so to speak. You're like a fruit that's getting ripe enough to be picked or to fall from the branch, right? So try not to be discouraged. It's hard to not know how much longer you have to go, but just say to yourself, thank you, body. Thank you for doing all this work to prepare us for a smooth, easy birth. Thank you, God, for making my body smart enough to know what to do to get us ready for this event. Because there's nothing predictable or formulaic about this, guys. There's not like a book somewhere that's like, if you have diarrhea, then you're going to go into labor 72 hours later. Or if you have an emotional crash, you're probably going to have your baby in 4 days. Or if you lose your mucus plug, you have 2 days to wait. There simply is there's no algorithm, there's no chart, there's no standardized norms of any sort for this, which is why it comes back over and over and over again. I feel like I come back to this so often when I'm talking about anything related to birth. Surrender and trust. Surrender and trust. Surrender and trust. Surrender and trust. That's kind of all we're left with. We can notice these symptoms happening in our bodies and be like, oh, that's interesting. I see you. I see you, body, getting ready for this. I also know that doesn't mean anything's for sure guaranteed to happen. It might be, and you might have a gut feeling, and sometimes our gut is definitely right, but we can notice it, and then we just kind of have to let it go, and we have to surrender to the unknown. And even if you've had tons of babies before, you still have mystery to surrender to every time. Every time you have new mysteries to surrender to. And the surrender is made easier by knowing that we can trust God, that we can lean into him and trust that he knows exactly what he's doing in our bodies and in our stories. He has pre-appointed the time of our baby's birth. He knew it before he even formed them in our womb. He has in mind a full knowledge of our calendars, our preferences, our capacity, our needs. And in light of all that information of an all-seeing God, he has preordained and pre-knows and has appointed a time for your baby to be born that will be just right. It will be just right. It won't feel like it in the moment. It might feel like this is inconvenient. This sucks. I'm uncomfortable. I hate not knowing. I just want to know. I want to schedule a C-section so I can know when this baby's going to be born. But if we could surrender to that and trust of a good father who has like our best in mind for both us and our baby, he wants good outcomes for both of us. So much. So surrender and trust. I'm sorry I say it all the time. I'm like a broken record, but it really is the truest thing that I know to say about everything related to birth. A couple more practical tips for this waiting game. There's two things that seem opposite, but I think there's room for both of them for coping during this time. One is distracting yourself. I find it incredibly helpful to make something on the calendar each day that's like a plan with a friend or some sort of fun thing I can look forward to every day on the calendar leading up to when I'm due and beyond. Something that can be easily canceled if I do go into labor, but gives me something to look forward to each day. And ideally that activity will have nothing to do with birth. Nothing. Like it'll be like thrift store shopping or like painting a door or going on a date with one of my kids or swimming or like, something that's not like about trying to make my baby come out. It's just a fun thing that makes me feel good. And that helps me rest and not be quite so obsessive about every twitch and twinge that I'm experiencing in my body. It gives me something to look forward to each day instead of like waking up disappointed every day that I'm not in labor. And then the other part of it is to stop trying so hard, which comes back to surrender really. Like, I think that sometimes the more we strive to try to make our babies come out or encourage labor to come on, Sometimes this just ends up getting in our own way and kicking us in the butt. Sometimes it just backfires and we get so tense and so worked up about things that instead of helping labor along, we almost hold it back. So cease striving and distract yourself. All right, that's all that I had for today. I thank you so much for listening.